So I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes or so talking about demand trends in defense applications of titanium. Before I do that, like my other publicly traded friends, we do have to put forward a forward-looking statements disclosure. I'll give you just a second to read that, and then we'll really get into this. So my goal is to leave you with three thoughts here today. The first is that global defense spending is rebounding. In fact, more than rebounding, really we're hitting record levels in defense spending. Second of all, within that, we see huge increases in the amount of titanium being consumed in defense applications. And I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about aerospace structures within defense spending. There, of course, is a lot of titanium also going into land vehicles, armaments, missiles, and the like. However, as you'll see as I progress through this, the increases that we're seeing on airframes dwarfs everything else that's going on in defense spending. And then lastly, as we see this, and we do have a lot of wind at our back, we can't rest on our laurels in this, and we as an industry need to do our part to continue to increase the use of titanium in a variety of different applications. And to us, that always comes back to technology, whether that's product technology, process technology, alloys, and the like. We need to be continually reinventing the way that we engage with our customers to increase the value proposition that we bring. So within aerospace, this is a view of the broader aerospace market, and I'll bring this around to defense spending in a couple of slides. But for those that were with us in Shanghai, you will have seen this previously. As we look at trends in material use in airframes from 2015 to 2020, what you can see is that titanium is the fastest growing metal in airframes. And then followed by composites. Titanium and composites, of course, are growing in tandem given the compatibility of them from a properties perspective. And these materials are growing at the expense of aluminum. One thing that I would point out is that the increases in total buy weight is in fact lower than the increases in the total build rates, and that's really being driven by, first of all, the fact that there is a lightweighting going on, but second of all, improvements in buy-to-fly ratios, and so that's really driving the difference there. But the key takeaway is titanium is growing at about 4% per year in aerospace applications. When we take that down to defense spending, one of the things that you can see is that as we came out of the last decade, at the peak of the Middle East conflicts and just really getting into the peak of the global financial crisis, we had several years of retrenchment. Military spending peaked at about 1.675 trillion US dollars in 2011, and then went into a steady decline through 2015. However, since then, on the back of ongoing conflicts, but also improvements in the economy, particularly this year as we're seeing GDP levels in Western countries, including the US, hitting levels that nobody would have thought we could have achieved even 2 years ago. That is increasing defense budgets around the globe. And as you look at the pie on the right, the other thing that's very interesting is that if we would have looked at this pie chart even a decade ago, you would have seen that the Americas would have represented fully half of global defense spending. And you see now a much more balanced distribution of global defense spending, with the Americas still being the largest portion of that. However, increases particularly in Europe and the Middle East really driving up the spending that we're seeing. And so coming back around to airframes, given that this is where so much of our titanium is going, what you can see is that from 2017 through 2020, we're seeing a 6% compound annual growth rate in sales of new military aircraft. In addition to this, we're seeing substantial titanium demand coming from retrofits. And these retrofits are going into multiple applications, but primarily extending the life of legacy aircraft that is complementing the acceleration of new programs. And for everything that's going on in airframes, there's a similar trend that we're seeing on engines, where not just the traditional titanium alloys, but also titanium aluminides and other advanced titanium alloys are finding applications. And here's really where a lot of this comes home for us. I talked previously about the growth in titanium on aircraft in general, where we saw titanium growing from 12% of the overall buy weight to 14%. When we look at military aircraft, the difference is substantially more pronounced. As we look at the prior generation of aircraft, programs like Typhoon, F-15, F-18, those programs averaged about 10% titanium content. As we look at the current generation, so this is V-22, F-22, and then more recently the F-35, the Joint Strike Fighter, we're seeing that rather than the historical 10% titanium content, we're seeing ranges from 20% all the way up to 39% of the weight of that aircraft is titanium. And so in the face of 6% compound annual growth rate in build rates, we're also seeing a massive shift to increased use of titanium within these aircraft. And you can see that among these, the most recent, the Joint Strike Fighter, we're anticipating a 14% compound annual growth rate in build rates from 2018 through 2022. So quite a bit of work going on there. And then, of course, just reinforcing again, I've been talking a lot about airframes, but there are similar things going on in land-based defense and armaments, hypersonic weapons and structures, and advanced propulsion engines. And so with all of that wind at our back, we continue, though, to have headwinds facing us as well. A year ago, we saw a rather public standoff between our newly elected President Trump and Lockheed Martin over the price of the Joint Strike Fighter. That has led to the JSF Affordability Initiative. We see the same thing out of other aerospace primes, whether it's Partnering for Success or Scope Plus or IM Cubed or all of these other initiatives that we see, all centered around how can we help our customers satisfy their customers in best applying taxpayer dollars. Other challenges that we see and things we need to be mindful of are sourcing geography, particularly as we get into foreign military sales and we start seeing an increasing percentage of sales going into the Middle East. There's an increasing demand for local content or so-called offsets. And how are we as an industry responding to that? How are we as an industry looking at the opportunity to have content coming from around the globe? And then finally, we have ongoing challenges relative to procurement practices, supplier consolidation, and material and contract aggregation. And so the answer here with all of these headwinds is that we need to continue to reinvent the way that we engage with our customers. And again, this comes down to innovation. And innovation could be in the form of product innovation, building larger parts to consolidate more pieces to make it more economical, producing forms that previously weren't possible. It can also come in the form of alloy innovation, developing the next generation of titanium alloys that can operate at higher temperatures, or exhibit lower weight characteristics. All of the different ways that we can innovate and advance the alloys in order to make the value proposition of titanium that much stronger. And then finally, process innovation. And so process innovations that really help our customers achieve the buy-to-fly ratios that they're so desperately chasing, whether it's 3D printing or various other forms of net or near net shaped forming in order to improve the use of titanium in each of these applications. And so with that, let me just quickly wrap up again and thank you, first of all, for your time, but second of all, reinforce defense is an incredibly strong industry, and it will continue to grow, like we said, with the Joint Strike Fighter growing 14% over the next 5 years. However, in order to protect our position, to protect titanium's position on all of the defense applications, it's critical that we continue to reinvent the way that we engage with our customers so that we can bring the innovation forward that protects our position.